There is a fifth dimension.
About the unknown.
Beyond that which is known to man.
The Garden of Thought.
The Babylon Project was our last best hope for peace.
Unexplained.
Mythologies.
This is the dimension of imagination. It is an area which we call...
The Garden of Thought with Jeff Lippman.
Eventually, our sun will grow cold and go out.
You're listening to something much bigger, something hidden in plain sight.
It won't just take us. It'll take Marilyn Monroe and Lao Tzu and Einstein. All of this was for nothing, unless we go to the stars.
What you're about to learn will completely change the way you experience your mind, your thoughts, and yourself.
Let's make sure that history never forgets the name.
The Garden of Thought.
Welcome into the garden, and we are welcoming back to the show Professor Michael York, who's coming to us this time from London. He's always someplace in Europe that sounds more fabulous than where we are now, though. My understanding from my European friends is that wherever they are, they tend to hate their government as much as we tend to hate our government, and I still continue my fruitless search to find people who actually like their government. Which is probably the state of a different show. In any event, first of all, welcome. Thank you, Michael. How are you?
I'm pretty good. And I think people in Finland must approve of their government.
Okay. I
Maybe Switzerland. Otherwise, I think what you're saying is quite true.
I need to find some people in Finland and Switzerland, or one person in Finland and one person in Switzerland who will talk to me to either confirm or deny that. All right. So, hey, I'm sure I have at least one listener in each of those countries. If you've got something to say, you know someone who wants something to say, I am really easy to reach. But we have done a lot of Indo-European traveling on this show. Before I even knew what the phrase meant or was somewhere in the recesses of my forgotten brain. We have traveled the path of the Indo a couple times before, but not from necessarily an academic level. And to show that there is some sort of spiritual synchronicity in the universe, I actually got a WhatsApp this week from a guest from probably 3 or 4 years ago named Ajit, who actually did the Indian, I think the Rig Veda, the Mahabharata, but he spoke of it as history, which is fine and cool, and go back and listen to that show. He's actually sent me like an hour and a half long video. It's on YouTube, and I'll be happy to send it to anybody who asks, especially if you're from Finland or Switzerland. But he's actually created a whole virtual reality where you can basically go through the Rig Veda and the Mahabharata and experience the history and walk with, the gods and the characters, sort of like in I'm sure everyone who's done VR knows how to do it. The only person who probably hasn't done VR is probably me and Michael. We saw movies, so we probably have an idea how it works. Anyway, so I guess we're going to go sort of from Sumeria, make a right turn. We're going to go east and go further into the Indus Valley, which I guess would be Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, and thereabouts, and or modern days. That's what we call it. And I'm going to hand the baton over to you, and then lead on.
All right. I think we go back a little bit before that, before we get to India. And of course, it's contentious where the Indo-European or the Proto-Indo-European homeland is. The consensus at this point seems to be the steppe lands north of the Black Sea and the Volga River Valley, what would now probably be basically Kazakhstan. And the person who really, well, a number of people pushed it, but it was Maria Gimbutas who really suggested that the Kurgan culture was essentially Indo-European or Proto-Indo-European. So we usually call them PIE, P-I-E, Proto-Indo-European.
Oh, okay.
And they seem to have been not just a single people, they seem to have been a group of different cultures, but basically sharing this proto-language. And the first branch that kind of moved from that area would be the Anatolian branch, of which the Hittites are the more prominent. And then you have the Luwians, the Palians. They're also part of the Anatolian family. And then you have
Are the Hyksos also, or the Hurrians? Oh, you said Hurrians.
Hittites. Hurrians were not Indo-European. It was, we don't really know quite what language family they belonged to. They have some affinity with Semitic languages, but they probably were a different language altogether, different language family.
Oh, I was told they were Scythians, but I've been told a lot of things from a lot of people.
No, Scythians come a little bit later, and they're Indo-European. All right, so the next branch that kind of cut off probably around the same time, and we're really talking about the Indo-European migrations from about 4,000 BCE to about 1,000 BCE. And the other branch was the Tocharians, who went to the Tarim Basin, which is now in northwest China, or that's where you find it. And we basically know about them through some Buddhist texts. And so they've been able to determine what those people were Indo-European as well.
I'm sorry, can I answer the Kurgan people? First of all, is Kurgan means mound?
Yes, it means tumulus. And it's a little debatable because other peoples had Kurgans or tumuli as well. But basically, Gimbutas just called the whole culture Kurgan culture. And basically supposed, in her understanding, that they were the Indo-Europeans.
Is the modern state of Kyrgyzstan related to the word Kurgan, or is that just something that sounds similar?
I think that's something else. But
was the Kurgan in the movie Highlander supposed to be a reference to the Kurgan people?
That could be.
Okay. Everyone's first, or my first introduction to Clancy Brown, and of course I'm everyone,
yeah.
So.
All right, so the Indo-Europeans kind of, the ones that went west basically spoke Kentum languages, the ones that went east spoke Satem language. So that's the term for 100. And the people who went west had the hard C, Kentum, whereas the ones that went east had the soft S sound, Centum. And the Kentum languages that went west, they were both Albanians, Greeks, and other Paleo-Balkan languages. Their homeland, after they moved out of that original proto-homeland, was probably the Balkans. And then from there you get the Proto-Celtics, the Proto-Italics, which went into Central Europe around 3000 BCE. And they've been basically identified with the Yamanaya culture and migrations, which had settled originally in the Danube Valley. What distinguishes these people, and as well as the ones that went east, was the fact that they had horse and wheeled vehicles. And then the Proto-Germanics and the Proto-Baltic Slavs basically probably developed in what is now Ukraine, and they spread north. Is basically they think as the corded ware culture. Corded ware refers to their pottery, which they imprinted with cords as an exterior decoration.
Who are the Thracians?
The who?
The Thracians or Thrace?
I think they're the Illyrians, and it's another one of these. It's a minor Indo-European language family. They only appear as I forget what as the Thracians, I think. The other minor one would be the Albanians.
I like a lot of that's like from Homer. So they're I just assume they're in the somewhere between modern day Greece and then what was Anatolia. So the Balkans and Albania, Bulgaria.
North of Greece, but Thrace, but
so Croatians basically, or maybe. But that would be like Danube, though. Like the base of the Danube is sort of near there somewhere within 500 miles anyway. All right. So that forget about the Thracians for the rest.
So it's all kind of debatable, and you try to trace the languages, you try to trace the manifest cultures, and now they do a lot of DNA examinations, I guess, both from tombs and from living people, to try to see who is what and where and all that. And so it's all quite fluid as far as consensual agreement is concerned. But the general idea is that the Proto-Indo-Europeans came from the steppe lands and basically either went west, became the Germans and the Celts and the Italics, the Romans, the Greeks, and so forth, or they went east. And the real branch that went east was the Proto-Indo-Iranian peoples. They're identified with Sintash, let's see if I can pronounce it right, Sintashta culture, which is around 2100 to 1800 before Christ. They were on the eastern border of the corded ware cultures, or corded ware related cultures. And we're now really talking about the Middle Bronze Age. And basically these people lived in the southern Urals, and they grew into what is known as the Andronova culture.
So how long ago are we talking? Is this like 5000 BC?
No, now we're talking about 2000 BCE.
Okay. So the Bronze Age collapses, what, about 3,700 years ago, like 1700 BC, or is that 1200 BC?
Let's see. Yeah, I think it finishes around 1700 BCE.
Okay.
And so,
can I ask you a question about before you said the Yamani? Is that the word?
Yes.
Were they noted for something? Did they have like a certain burial practice or something that sort of stuck out and was transported around? Because I've heard that phrase before, and for whatever reason, burial seems to stick out with it. But it could very well be that they.
I know they moved into the Danube Valley.
Okay.
And they were pretty strong, and so the cultures that we're talking about have been identified with that particular culture. What actually identifies them, I'm not really sure at this point. They did have the horse and the wheel, as far as I know.
Well, that's big. The horse, the wagon, the wheel is
migrations from that area, both east and west.
Yeah. I mean, there's a whole book called like the horse, the wheel, the wagon. So, and it's actually a good book, and it's good to listen to. And also with that, I guess, came chariots as well, which became pretty useful. And it was like, I guess, the world's first tanks.
Right. That's true. That's how they seem to have dispersed and spread as successfully as they did, because they conquered other peoples, became the rulers, imposed their language, and so the Indo-Europeans.
I should say though, someone out there is yelling at me right now. The world's first artificial tanks. as opposed to battle elephants. And anyone out there who's Hancockian, I'm not getting into any unproven, as of yet unproven civilizations with technology that existed prior. I'm just going to stick with what we know. But yeah, artificial battle tanks. I'm not trying to give short shrift to people who used elephants in war, because that's objectively fantastic.
That was Hannibal, I think. Used the elephants.
Yeah, but he couldn't be the first one that did. By the way, good job, people. Those elephants are extinct.
What, Hannibal's elephants or the mastodon?
Well, the kind of elephants that Hannibal used, apparently they were some sort of like you cannot domesticate African elephants. You can domesticate Indian elephants, but these were neither. This was obviously in Africa. There was like a different breed of elephant that was sort of somewhere between Indian and African, and you could train it, or obviously, and then get it to walk over, small paths in the Pyrenees.
Almost over the Alps.
Yeah, the Alps, which seemed to be a terrible idea, but seemed very cool.
I don't think they really made it.
Yeah, whether they would have or not, we'll never know because of a guy named Scipio, but which is also a fantastic name. Anyway, I keep taking us west, and you keep wanting to take us east, which is the agenda of the show.
I thought behind this, but
no, you're correct.
I mean, I think you need to see the West as well as how it relates to the East, and these different peoples are coming from the same general area. I think basically I would identify it as Kazakhstan, roughly that area.
Okay.
And so you're getting into the stans now. Kazakhstan is bordered on the west and north by Russia, on the east by China, to the southeast by Kyrgyzstan, to the southwest by Turkmenistan, and to the south by Uzbekistan. And so these peoples basically moved. The ones that went east, they spread both into the Levant itself, northern India, and then the Iranian plateau, roughly. So you have these three different divisions that occur. Now, the ones that went to the Levant are known as the Mitanni, and we don't know too much about them, but we have some texts. And the interesting thing about the texts is they do list a number of deities whose names are recognized as the same names we find among the Vedic Indians.
Oh, let's hear.
Indra and Agni, also Mithra and Varuna.
Fantastic.
And a few other personal names have been recognized as Indo-European.
Who are the Natufians? The who? The Natufians? Does that come into play here?
I don't know. I don't know who they are, and I don't think it comes into play.
I think they're what we would call proto-Canaanites, maybe? All
right. Well, the Canaanites, of course, are Semites, and there is an interchange between the Indo-Europeans to the north and the Semites to the south.
Sure.
There's always been some sort of a cultural exchange and even religious exchange or influences from one to the other.
Yeah, it's not the Holy Land for no reason. It's the Holy Land because it's the crossroads of 3 continents.
Yes, exactly. All right, so the Vedic peoples are the ones that moved into northern India maybe around 1500 BC, maybe 1700 BC. That's, again, always debatable. And they came in several waves. They originally lived, and basically sort of seemed to have taken over the Harappan Indus Valley cultures. And only much later did they spread into the Ganges Valley. But, and so we know about them through the Rig Veda and the other 3 Vedas. Those are probably your earliest religious texts. Maybe the one treaty that the Mitanni had dates to the same time, maybe even a little bit earlier. But the Rig Veda is where you really see who the deities are, the hymns in the Rig Veda are basically identifying the deity that it's addressed to and what that deity can give to you. And so you're praising the deity for what he or she can provide for you. Usually health, success in battle, wealth, and children, and so forth. And so it's a very positivistic or positive spirituality. It's there's not really this what develops ultimately as Vedism transforms into Hinduism, which is basically then it becomes a Dharmic religion. Vedics are really pagan as opposed to Dharmic, and they're much more here and now oriented, earth, recognizing the earth and the sacredness of the earth, the elements, nature. And so life is not seen as something to escape as it ultimately becomes for the Hindus. And so I see it as a more positive thing. And in some sense, there's an affinity in spirit, I think, that you have with the ancient Greek culture, where the deities are personifications of nature. Essentially, they get a little rambunctious, and by our standards, can be judged rather negatively. But they're really regarded as positive creatures, either indifferent to humanity or helpful to humanity. If you didn't praise the pagan gods, the Indo-European pagan gods, they just ignored you. But if you did the right rituals and you honored them and so forth, then they were inclined to assist you. That was at least the idea behind worship with the Indo-Europeans.
I think some of the mythology stories and the gods and their interplay and interactions with each other and humans and demigods and their children was complicated because no matter how hard you prayed or sacrificed, things went wrong. I think that was just a way of saying life is complex. And even if you think you appeased here, or maybe you didn't appease here because, you didn't give enough attention to like a white bull, which, she liked in that particular, season or whatever.
Well, it seems to have worked for several centuries at least.
That's true.
Because, and it's only in the Rig Veda. The Rig Veda is interesting because the last mandala, number 10, that's where you begin to see this shift into what ultimately becomes the Brahmanas and the Upanishads and ultimately the Bhagavad Gita and so forth. And the Hindu ideas grow out of the Vedic ideas, but they are something different than Vedism.
And some of the gods, as you said, the names transfer. But if I'm not mistaken, somewhere in the Indian pantheon, like the primordial god of the heavens, that sort of just was the creator god, but sort of is not that interested. Sort of like the Uranus figure is a guy named Anu, and Anu sort of is a name that repeats quite a bit.
Well, Anu is really Canaanite, and so that's Semitic. And
there's no Anu in Indian. I mean, listen, I'm sure I can be wrong easily.
Not Anu. He has affinities to some of the other figures, and I'll get to some of that in a bit. But if you really examine the Indo-European mythologies, they don't really have a creator god as such. That's a later idea. That's Hindu, that's Levantine, and so forth. They recognize the earth as Hesiod puts it, as the first of all beings. Mm. And she's the mother. And you get a little bit of it is confused because Hesiod then is very much influenced by the Hittite succession myth, in which you have a male god who's overthrown by his son, who's then in turn overthrown by his son.
Right.
But in the probably pre-Hesiod or Hesiodic understanding, going back to an Indo-European understanding, the mother goddess Gaia, the earth, gives birth to her son, who is the heaven, who is ultimately the prototype of Zeus. And so you eliminate that Hittite succession myth, because that's not Indo-European. And she gives birth to a son who becomes her equal in some sense. He's the heaven, he's the light, she's the earth. And together then, they produce, their first child is the dawn goddess. And there's sometimes the Zeus figure has a twin, so that you have the divine twins. But that's one version. The other version is that the sun, the sky, the light god, falls in love with their daughter, the dawn goddess. And so they make love, and she either resists him or she's promiscuous and is as much a part of the union. And their child, can you tell me who their child would be?
Well, I'm thinking that the light god is Krishna, and I'm thinking that the storm god is Indra, but maybe I have them backwards.
Indra is probably, he was actually the son of the light god.
Oh, then Brahma.
No.
Yeah, I got no
idea. You have the light god, who's really in the Vedic it's Deus, Deyaus, which is cognate to Zeus, cognate to Jupiter, cognate to Tiwaz of Tyr,
and the word Dios, God.
And the word Dios, and the child that he produces with the dawn is the sun, of course, and so but Deus.
Don't tell me his name is Amun-Ra.
Now you're jumping into Egypt.
Yeah, or Cush, as I've learned this week. Is it Heli?
Yeah, and there are all these names and figures, but they're all, you have to be a little careful when you take them out of one culture.
Yeah.
And so, all right, so where was I going now? All right.
You were questioning me, and I got Deus wrong.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, it's an interesting thing because in some of the later Vedic, or at least the Hindu literature, maybe even the 10th mandala of the Rig Veda itself, the sky god is punished for having fallen in love with his daughter.
Makes sense to me.
And she has a whole range of names, but we recognize among the Greeks that she's not only Eos, and among the Vedics she's Ushas, which means the east in both cases, because that's where the dawn first appears. Sometimes she has a name that's a modification of the word east, and sometimes she has a name that's a feminization of the sun. So you have the Vedic sun god is Surya, but the dawn goddess, one of her names is Surya, is a feminization of Surya. And among the Greeks, that name is probably cognate with Hera.
Oh, okay.
So when you look at Deus or Zeus as the son of the Earth Mother, and they together produce the dawn goddess, the Zeus figure and the dawn goddess are siblings, a brother and sister, as well as father-daughter. And so the Greeks retain the idea of the dawn goddess being the sister of Zeus. And so what you actually have in that whole instance is the elevation of the dawn goddess into being the queen of heaven and the legitimate wife of the sky figure.
Yeah, it's long known that incest between gods and royal families is.
It's just there wasn't anybody else. I mean, so they had to have incest at first. So.
Plus, they're gods. There's no way of becoming out, with genetic problems. I mean, even Hephaestus had to be thrown off Mount Olympus to break his hip.
Well, he was a little deformed to begin with, and that's all right. We'll get into Hephaestus at some point too, but so so anyhow, but basically, the sky light god and the earth mother are the parents of the gods, and what happens then is in Iran. All right, did we get into the Iranians? The Iranian language is spread back into the steppes first, and the Scythians were one of the first major cultures that emerged out of them, and they went, I think, to the Caucasus, and north of the Caucasus is where they were basically situated. But into the Iranian plateau, you have the Medes, the Parthians, and the Persians. And then comes along Zarathustra, Zoro Astur. What happens there, and this is an interesting story, was it Cyrus the Great? He's off conquering Egypt, and he conveniently murders his brother before he leaves Persia.
Well, you have to. You can't leave any loose ends if you go on a campaign. Yes. And when you say Cyrus, most people call him Cyrus the Great.
Cyrus, all right, right. And
you say it however you want. I just want to translate for the audience.
Yes, no, that's fine.
Remember, he's in London, so it's a different language there.
It is a completely different language.
Yeah.
All right, so Cyrus is coming back because the Magi, from which we get our word magic, suddenly put somebody on the throne claiming to be Cyrus's brother. And so
a vampire.
Knew that he had,
a vampire, no doubt, right?
What?
A vampire, no doubt, probably named Lazarus.
Yeah, well, we could put it that way. But Cyrus knows that something's up and he's rushing back and happens to die in Babylon before he gets back.
Oh.
So then we have Darius, coming from I forget the name of his province, but it's northeast of the Iranian plateau itself. And he comes and...
Would that be like modern-day Turkmenistan?
It could be. I'd have to get out a map and look at that.
It is my favorite name for a country, by the way.
Would it be Turkmenistan? I think. All right, no, I don't think it would be Turkmenistan. I think it would be
Afghanistan?
Closer to Afghanistan, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are we, I'm sure that there's variations, but between India and modern-day India and modern-day Iran, the countries in between, there's a few. There's Bangladesh, there's Pakistan, there's Afghanistan. Are these stories, this culture, this language, more or less the same as it flows from east back west?
Well, they're all in the Indo-Aryan families, or the Indo-Iranian.
Okay, I just don't want to, alienate the people from the stands that are actually probably the stands that most people have heard of, as opposed to Kyrgyz and Tajik and Uzbek and Kazakh, and of course Turkmen, my favorite.
I'm not sure what they all speak in the stands now. I thought a lot of it was Arabic.
Oh, I think they speak Pashtun, and then some speak Arabic. I think it's all over the place now. Yeah,
that part's true. So now, where was
Farsi? Farsi, some speak.
Well, that. All right. So we're talking about Darius,
right?
And he conquers the usurper of the throne. I forget what his name was, Mithras or something like that. And he becomes the ruler of Persia. But he brings along this prophet Zoroaster, and Zoroaster inverts the whole Indo-European understanding of the light god on the top and so forth, and he makes the Zeus figure into the devil. Basically, the son of Zeus or Dios in India is Indra. So he's got the same characteristics of Zeus and Jupiter. He's a lightning god.
The Gnostics did the same thing. They turned Yahweh into Beelzebub or Satan, and Enlil into Satan.
Maybe so. The Gnostics kind of did it in a different sense, but
listen, I'm on the YouTube sphere all the time. People are still doing, not necessarily Gnostics, but like certain evangelicals and certain sects. I don't even know if they have names, but there's a lot of people turning every god that's not Jesus into some form of the devil.
Well, this is what was sort of kind of happened with the Zoroastrianism or Zoroastrianism, and he put the.
He might be the most influential person in the world, then.
Pardon me?
He might be the most influential person in the world, Zoroaster. You know, in the history of the world, you know, that we could at least identify.
In some sense, yes, because all right, in India, the enemy of the devas, the gods, were basically known as the Asuras. But he, in this inversion, he took the Asura and elevated into Ahura Mazda, the wise Asura, and made him the ultimate supreme deity in conflict with the demons, which were basically given names from the devas.
Perhaps the stupidest question I've ever asked you, and anyone has ever asked you, but I have to do it, is the Japanese car company now owned by Ford that may not exist any longer, Mazda, does it come from the same phrase you just said?
I think so. But Mazda itself means wise.
Okay.
So, all right. So the Magi, not to be undone, declared ultimately Zoroaster as a magus, as another one of them. And so, even though Darius instituted an annual festival called the Magophonia, which means the slaughter of the Magi, they still became the ruling clerical body of the Persians.
So they're like, some of us had it coming.
Yeah. Well, they were very clever and very powerful. I mean, so what happens? So then Persia always became the enemy of Rome.
Right.
And I think the original, this is a hypothesis, it's my book, The Divine versus the Assyrian. But I think you can make a good case for it. I think the Magi then had to try to infiltrate Rome. And they first attempted to do it through the Mithraic religion. It wasn't ultimately successful for several reasons. One, it was only open to men, not women. Secondly, it was too identified with the enemy of Rome, which was Persia. So I think they made a second attempt, and you have to realize also that there was an affinity now between the Hebrews and the Persians, because because the Persians actually liberated the Jews from the Babylonian captivity, and they kind of recognized an identity, or at least an affinity, between their god Ahura Mazda and Yahweh, Elohim of the Jews. So you have that connection. And so the Magi then said, all right, we're going to have to do it through the Jews to be able to get to Rome. And you have the three Magi that, of course, visit the birth of Christ. And I think that Christ's figure was basically a Magi creation.
Well, I think you're right, because isn't like the origin story or the birth story of Mithras like identical to the birth story of Christ?
Very similar, yes, very similar.
But like 1,000 years earlier?
Whether it's 1,000 years earlier, I'm not quite sure. And I think Mithras was born from a rock, and Jesus was from a virgin. But
I will take virgin over rock, but I guess once you're born, you really don't care. Imagine being suckled by a rock. I mean, is this where the she-wolf comes in?
But that's what?
Is this where the she-wolf comes in to steal everybody's religion and to suckle the baby?
I think the she-wolf is really another manifestation of the earth goddess.
Oh, I like that. Okay, good. See, this is why he's the professor and I'm just the podcast talky guy.
I know, but I mean, it's what I'm saying is it's controversial. I can make a case, and I think I did make a case for it in my book, but there's going to be a lot of people who will not agree, and a lot of academics will not agree. So
it's okay.
But anyhow,
they're not on this show.
What
they're not on the show, so you know. So, yeah.
So all right. So when
you're just debating an idiot right now, so don't worry.
Yeah, but I'm assuming that some non-idiots might be listening to the program.
Let's hope.
Let's hope.
Let's hope.
All right. So one thing with Zoroaster, because fire was so central to the Indo-Europeans, he couldn't dismiss fire as a demon, and so among the Persians is Attar, and so their temples are basically fire temples. The Zoroastrians, the Parsis, and the other figure that he had trouble with was Soma. Now Soma would be a Dionysian figure. He's actually the twin of Indra, the twin of the lightning lord. And so those are the lightning lord and the psychedelic lord are the divine twins. And so Zoroaster had to allow the Persian equivalent of Soma is Homa, Haoma. And so those two figures somehow are still part of the divine pantheon, or whatever you want to call it, of the Persians. And so you have this incredible inversion between what Zoroaster did with the Indo-European pagan tradition and the rest of the pagan peoples, whether it's the Greeks or Romans, the Celts, the Germans, the Vedics, and so forth. And then through that whole connection of Persia with Palestine, with the Hebrews, the Jews, ultimately conquering Rome, we have a kind of a hegemony, a Magian hegemony. I really think that the whole Roman Catholic Church is a continuation of the Persian Magi.
I don't think they agree.
What was that?
I don't think they agree.
They wouldn't want to, but I think if you really got right down to it, you might find that to be the case.
Well, I think there's a pretty good argument that there's straight lines between, every religion. I think it's a little bit. There's also spider webs in between, but if you look high enough, there's sort of a through line on most religions.
Well, you have basically four. I think I've mentioned this before. You have basically four ideal types of religion. The Abrahamic is one of them. And it basically postulates a personal creator deity, so it's kind of like a super mind, or I'm not sure what else you want to call it. And you have both Hebrewism, Christianity, and Islam are that Abrahamic tradition. And they're very much opposed to paganism. They want just the one God, and it can't be a personified God of nature, as the pagan traditions were. So you have paganism, you have Abrahamic, you have, of course, the secular, which denies all of the supernatural, all of the magical. And really, in our day, is basically Darwinism, that life originated as a a mutation of a primal cell that was probably infested by a virus at some point, and then it caused it to start subdividing. Evolution just continued from that. And so I think one of the people who expresses that whole Darwinian idea the best is Daniel Dennett. And he basically differentiates between the idea of the skyhook, some kind of God from above hanging on the sky, creating things, and the skyhook is differentiated from the crane, which is based on the earth, and it can do the same kind of lifting ultimately, but it comes from it's part of evolution, not some magical intervention.
Bottom up, not top down.
Yes, exactly.
What's the difference between secularism and Darwinism?
Is there what?
What's the difference between secularism and Darwinism?
Secularism includes both atheism and agnosticism, sometimes materialism, the non-magical idea of nature being the source of all. Darwinism is probably a philosophical expression of the broader category of secularism.
Okay.
But,
I mean, they seem to be the same in parts. I mean, I understand how everything can separate, but when okay.
And then, of course, the fourth thing is the Dharmic religions, which they're similar to the Abrahamic in the sense that they are dismissing ultimately the value of the earth. Maybe Islam does that a little bit less. They recognize the earth and nature as a creation of Allah, and so they respect it a bit more, but they always wanting to get to this other world, to this heaven. And with the Dharmic religions, they're not even trying to get to heaven, they're just trying to get free of the whole shebang. The difference between the Dharmic and the pagan is the pagans basically honor and venerate the whole spirit of wishing, of desire, of engagement with life, whereas the Dharmic religions are trying to eliminate all desire, as they understand it, to free the person from rebirth, from incarnation, and to either achieve nirvana or samadhi, moksha, whatever term they want to use for it. And so you have those four kind of religious types. They have two of them will have certain affinities, but they all can be differentiated in a very, very broad sense. Most religions have some elements of at least one of the other ideal types, sometimes more than one. But so I'm really looking at it as in more abstract sense, as an ideal image. The sociologist uses the ideal type as it's kind of a measuring device. If we look at the ideal type and then look at any given particular religion and try to figure out how it differs from the ideal, and then understand why it differs from the ideal and how it came to that, and so forth. So I don't know if that's clear or if that's confusing, but
it's both clear and confusing. I mean, it's. I mean, I don't think it can be stated any more clearly. I mean, because I am sort of lost in this world and go down a lot of rabbit holes, which, turn into not rabbit holes any longer. They become like cave systems. It's like, I see your four, different types of religions as almost like the gods procreating with each other and copulating and creating like all these different sects and theories and whatever that, you go from uniformity to multiplicity again. And it's like this, I think the cycles
and conflict and, where they actually become opposed to one another.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like you go from, and I think it's important to differentiate between paganism and polytheistic, because I think people think they're synonymous and they're not synonymous.
Yeah.
I guess sort of like the Darwinian and the secular. One might contain the other, but they're not exactly the different aspects that, using giant umbrellas is sort of a mistake, which is a temptation that I fall into all the time, trying to fit things into umbrellas. But
there's always an edge to the umbrella, so you can always move from one umbrella to the next one.
It's true.
If you're at that right place.
Right, especially if you're in an umbrella store. So,
yeah.
And you're in London, so there's probably lots of umbrella stores. So.
It was pouring when I arrived.
Of course. Indra was not pleased.
Yeah. Well, no, he's trying to water the earth.
Okay. So who's the different, like, who's Krishna, who's Brahma? Well, I think we have a pretty good idea who Indra is.
All right. Brahma is a abstraction created by the Brahmins, who become the dominant clergy of Hinduism, and they're the ones that basically create Hinduism as opposed to Vedism, and and so Hinduism basically has two chief deities, either Vishnu or Shiva. Vishnu is the preserver, Shiva is the destroyer, but he destroys so that you can have a recreation.
Right.
And Brahma is kind of a personification of power. He's almost, I don't think there are any temples to Brahma. He's more of an abstract idea. He creates the world. Now, he is identified sometimes with Prajapati, who's identified with Dias. And one of the weaknesses of Brahma is the fact that he had this affair with his daughter. He's used as a abstract creator symbol because when you get into these non-nature oriented spiritual systems, they want to have a creator. They want to have something that has caused the whole thing. They don't want to see that it just something that evolved from nature, from Earth, that connects it, that makes it too physical for them. In the physical religions and the Gaia religions and paganism and so forth, they don't deny necessarily the supernatural, the preternatural, the co-natural, whatever you want to call it, but it's something that evolves from nature. It's not something that created nature. So there's a real distinction there. And you're right about polytheism. Polytheism is frequently pagan, but not exclusively pagan, because you have Zoroastrianism is a polytheistic form of religion. There's another one too that's Buddhism and Hinduism both have a polytheistic system, but they're not necessarily pagan religions. On the vernacular level, yes, Hinduism is very pagan. What people go to the temples for is basically asking for well-being, for health, for children, for success in business. So it's a very this-worldly oriented thing that most of the people are doing. It's the Brahmins and the sages and the ascetics and all that are taking it further and want to try to escape from all this, but not on the popular level.
Any idea why Americans associate the Brahma bull with, like, strength? And this is just Americans.
Well, the bull is a strong figure, and the bull was basically one of the vehicles of Indra, and Indra is the god of strength.
Okay, so that makes sense then. So it's a direct parallel, and that's not unusual. I mean, lots of religions, the bull was one of the signs of strength, right up there with lions and lions
and bulls. Yes, you have them.
Rams, eagles. Yeah. Is there like a dragon equivalent?
Among what, for Americans?
No. In the Indo part of the Indo-European.
Yeah. Well, yes. You have Vritra is the dragon that Indra slays.
Okay.
In India.
So you have the hero god defeating
the dragon that Zeus slays. The Midgard serpent is the one that Thor, whose name means thunder, for the Nordic peoples.
Right.
He slays that dragon. So yes, but that dragon image is not just Indo-European. And one interesting thing is that the Chinese culture, the dragon is seen as a positive entity, as opposed to how it's symbolized in much of the rest of the world.
Right. Somewhere on that route further east, things change for our friend the dragon.
Yeah.
Or get clarified. I don't know. I mean, I between some of the people who espouse certain versions of Christianity or Judaism, usually on the more mystical side, they say seraphim, the agents, means lizard or serpent, and they'll say burning ones, and they'll say burning serpents, and of course that gets interpreted in a million different ways. But a burning serpent, that's one of the angels and the choirs of angels of God, can't possibly be considered all bad, is like, I think, the only point I have here.
Yeah, well, that's kind of like with Zoro Astur and fire. He couldn't eliminate that, and even the Homa mind altering deity.
The which deity? I'm sorry.
The mind, Soma,
the mind altering drug. Yeah. People still call Soma a drug. I mean, and obviously using the exact same name.
Well, my daughter, who's gone off to Ecuador and Mexico, and has suddenly got into all this whole thing that we got into when I was her age, in my early 30s. It's all called medicine now. It's not called drugs.
I mean, there's, I'm not averse to that point. Things are generally how you use them, or if you can use them safely. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to go through the whole opioid and fentanyl thing, because... All
right. Let me make a point, though. For the Indo-Europeans themselves, this mind-altering thing that nature also provided, they understood it as the very twin of the light, God, enlightenment, understanding, brightness, all that, and it was part of either their worship or part of their experience was to incorporate that at least once in a lifetime. That was probably the basis of the mystery religions, even, but to experience that other world through something that nature has provided humanity to have that experience and to have that insight.
Yeah.
So it's once we developed Abrahamism and Christianity in particular, it's opposed to all that. It becomes the forbidden fruit, and it's condemned because humanity, Adam and Eve, indulged in it or allowed it, consumed it.
Except beer and wine are still not only kosher, but also encouraged and pivotal. I mean,
yeah. Well, you're going to find a pagan substratum through almost all religious expressions.
Yeah, and I read the Immortality Key, which, I mean, in my opinion, was really one good chapter repeated 10 times. But yeah, I mean, it was like, whatever warning label the Surgeon General would require to be put on, or past Surgeon Generals would require to be put on mind altering drugs, just stick to that. And from the folks I know who are advocates for ayahuasca and similar, they also tell you need an experienced guide there with you to, and you need to learn how to microdose. And we even have people on who were from a 501c3 church of the magic mushroom, and they told their story. So I'm not giving anything away, but they're like, we need to create a religion so that we can do this legally. I mean, then that's their origin story. They say so, but they're like, one's a doctor, and so they'll supervise people who want to, get that experience and, sort of have their mind freed, their third eye, the pineal gland, whatever people want to say, their inner oracle. I don't know. I have a friend that swears by it. I mean, I'm sure he would say it.
I would swear by it.
Yeah. Well, I have two friends that swear by it, at least. So, I don't know. My wife's from Ecuador, and she's never done that stuff. I mean, imagine me from South America and never doing cocaine. I mean, come on. I'm sure that's a bad joke, everyone. Terrible, terrible, terrible. But
I don't think she would like that. But.
No, I say it all the time, and it's okay in the household. Besides, everyone knows I'm afraid of her, and there's nothing to do with drugs. So,
well, maybe one should be, but.
Oh yeah. If you just saw her eyebrows, they're very mean. They're very, very. This has nothing to do with nothing. But this week, Kim Kardashian. I mean, she's always in the news for doing something, but apparently she has like an aneurysm or something. And and I'm like, oh, that's sad, whatever. But I'm like, all I can think about is like this woman spent hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to just look like my wife.
Well, then you're very lucky.
I am very lucky. It's almost time for renew my Faustian bargain. So, yeah. It's almost time for that. Yeah. Okay. So we have Brahma. We know Indra. We know.
You want to talk about Krishna?
Right. We have Krishna and Shiva.
Well, Krishna is considered an avatar of Vishnu. But Krishna was the enemy of Indra. And I think of the avatars of Vishnu, Krishna is kind of an imposition. It's kind of a creation from the Brahmins. I don't see Krishna, and I get in a lot of trouble with this, I don't see Krishna as a positive figure.
So it's sort of like the Justice League and the Legion of Doom. They're all gods, but they have their rivalries, which in the end is sort of back to Zarathustra, where you have this duality. Yeah,
he tries to conquer Indra, which is what Zoro Astur was doing. So Krishna is kind of a Mithras type figure.
So Bizarro would be Superman, and Superman would be Bizarro.
All right.
You're like, okay, fine. The Abomination would be Hulk, and Hulk would be Abomination.
All right. Yeah, you're more familiar with that. I miss a lot of that particular branch of culture.
But for I tried to do the same thing with John White. I tried to get him to look into Superman as like a modern day myth, and he's like, I'm not doing it. It's like,
no, I would agree that it is a modern day myth.
I think it is too, but his definition of myth requires something sacred or godlike, as opposed to just something, a giant story of social archetypes. So his is a more puritanical view towards it, but I don't mean puritanical.
Well, I mean, if you look at Greek myths, they're not particularly puritanical.
I don't mean in that way. I mean academic, maybe, as a stricter definition of myth as opposed to folklore or legend.
All right, but it's a fuzzy border between them, for one, and myth is a difficult concept to actually concretely define.
Right.
It's in many different things, and in many different things in different contexts.
That's why I want you two to be friends, so that you can have these kinds of debates that smart people have.
Well, that part's always fun.
He's right there in England.
All right. We'll have to cross paths at some point.
I think at the root of this email, you're both on the same email chain, because how Google insists on grouping emails together. So it always says Michael and John. I'm like, I'm not emailing John right now, or I'm not emailing Michael right now, but it keeps putting them together on my thing. So it's like, so I can't delete either of them. That's one of my OCDs. I must delete old emails, but I can't delete it. Otherwise, I've deleted the entire chains between both of you.
Oh, this whole bloody email internet thing is, I mean, I suppose it does some good things, but it seems like a curse at the same time.
Absolutely. The duality, again. That Zoro Astur, he was onto something.
I guess he was. I mean, it's one way of looking at it, but I mean, but if it wasn't for all this electronic stuff, we couldn't be having this conversation.
Absolutely. So I did want to do something, and so it sounds like the Indian and going Rig Veda prior to Hinduism, that it's a little bit like Egyptian in that the gods have avatars who are like gods, but they're on the mortal realm and act on the mortal realm as opposed to the celestial or heavenly or astral plane, whatever you want to call it. So, and that's interesting because they're not the same language group. They're not from the same place, but it's a similar concept, I suppose. But everyone knows the word Avatar from the show, the cartoon, kids cartoon, the last Avatar. And there's been others as well. But is there any relationship to? I mean, I don't know what's older. I guess Egyptian's older, but who really knows? With the avatars on Earth, but still being sort of immortal or semi-immortal beings, or
well, yeah, I mean, that seems to be I mean, it's not just Indo-European. That seems to be a broader pre-Abrahamic pagan kind of concept. Is that the gods are? I mean, they impregnate. They produce children. Like the heroes, the Greek heroes were usually sired by Zeus, or
sure,
sometimes Ares, sometimes Apollo, or whatnot, or Hermes very often.
Remember, one of the first questions I asked you is, can you think of any time when it was a woman who did it? And we came up with, I forget who it was, but like the nymph who was the mother of Achilles, who of course is a hero among heroes in at least one book.
Yeah. Let me see. Well, of course, Gaia produces Zeus, and they produce Indra. Indra's kind of a more active manifestation of the sky god himself. And this is debatable, but Indra could be cognate with Andros. So Indra is a personification of man, of mankind. And so he's very much the child of the gods, of the primordial parents, but he's also mankind, humanity.
So they do have gods to gods, and then gods to man, and then God-men to rulers, basically.
Yes.
So they've got that same lineage of straight from creator gods down to sort of demigods who become the rulers of us all.
Yeah, all right, yes. I mean, if we're
simplifying it.
We've moved a little bit beyond that, hopefully, but probably not really when you really look at the world situation today.
Well, I mean, if you listen to all the people who believe that there's 10 families, 13 families that rule the world, I mean, they go to Genesis 6 and, when, the angels, copulated with the daughters of Adam and Eve, and then, and then came up with whatever they came up with. And, if those aren't the demigods, I don't, I know that the popular is that they became cannibalistic giants and somehow survived the flood and this, that, and the other thing. But I think that people are taking biblical fan fiction a little bit too seriously with that. And I think they were just the demigods who were supposed to tell you that there's a divine trace between God and man, but that was bad, so there was a flood, and now we just had men.
Yeah, all right. That's again an Abrahamic.
I'm talking about Abrahamic. I mean, obviously, but those ideas were non-Abrahamic as well. Not the last one, but necessarily. I mean, I think in the non-Abrahamic, you were supposed to. That was the whole thing. Like the gods had men, and then the men became gods, and they became the pharaohs, or they became the Sumerian, list of kings, and and
well, there was always a connection between the gods and humanity,
right?
And that ultimately gets denied when you get to the Abrahamic religions, which basically half the planet subscribes to an Abrahamic religion today. And you can't have other gods. You only have one God, and everything else is either a demon or at least not God. And that's where we're at.
Yeah. Though, I mean, I see lots of people walking around with, like, charms of St. Michael or St. Christopher or this or the other on there, or, different angels and whatever. So anyway, everyone who's ever listened to the show, including guests, have heard my little rant on that. I don't think there's a monotheistic religion yet. I mean, I can't even get past the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost as, as being one. But I do think that Jesus was a way of trying to bring that God to man closer again, and dying for our sins was to make us closer again. And then, of course, the ascension back to be above it all. But and then it seems like Islam in some ways was like, nope, there's God, there's men. And, in between, I got my servants, and there was these wild cards of the jinn, and there's a bad guy, but there's God. There's no, there was no nice guy in between.
If you think of it, you have Judaism where you have God, then you have Christianity, you have God and the Son, and the Son kind of predominates, and so
kind of. You ever see a church where they've got a Father there or a Holy Ghost there? No, it's always Jesus.
Yeah. I mean, he is depicted a number of times in a number of places, but then I think Islam is almost a revolt against the usurping Son, and say no, the Father is it.
Agree 100%, but let's remember, I am an imbecile. So. It's definitely a reversal from the kinder, gentler version. I mean, and and through waves of time, it's debatable whether aspects of Christianity has been the kinder, gentler religion. But I mean, I'm not blaming that on Christianity. That's just human nature. I mean, it just sort of seems to be what it is.
I mean, all religions have had violent histories.
Yeah.
And they have conquered other people and persecuted them and that sort of thing.
Right. Just Christianity and Islam are the ones that are the biggest religions right now. If we were having the same conversation 6,000 years ago, we might be blaming it on the, I don't know, whatever you'd call the Sumerian religion would have been whatever they might have called themselves, or might have been blaming it on Baal or Ra or Set or whatever, or
it was probably your neighbors who you were always in conflict with, and so their deity became the anti-deity to your deity, and so forth. But
everything's about bad neighbors, and even homeowners associations don't solve it. So I don't know. There was this lovely time of perfection when there were like 2 million people on Earth, and everything seemed to be in balance.
And it seemed to be. I mean, whether it really was, but it's
That's
nice
right.
to think of that.
That's right. We love to romanticize aspects of the past and demonize other aspects of the past.
Well, all right. I mean, the Abrahamic religions have a much clearer concept of good and evil, and that's partly what Zoro Astur picked up on, that kind of divide, and he incorporated it. But your Indo-European religions don't have that understanding of good and evil.
Yeah, definitely more mixed.
And even the Dharmic religions don't really. I mean, it's not evil. You're just sort of trapped in physical rebirth, and you're always going to get tired and weary, and trying to release yourself from that. So it doesn't necessarily see the physical as evil, it just sees it as something you want to be freed from. And all that, and the suffering and the pain that physicality involves. But it's not putting it into a kind of a moral divide. That seems to be almost peculiarly Abrahamic.
So there is the reincarnation thing where, if you didn't live a great life, you might come back as a bug as opposed to, I don't know, a family pet dog. So there is some consequence, though. I mean, that's probably also distilling to a way oversimplified interpretation of that.
But even as a bug, I don't think you're considered necessarily evil. You're just having to work something out as a consequence of how you behaved previously.
That's true. And in some ways, bugs have a simpler life. I mean, I'm not likely to be eaten by a bird, but a bird's also not likely to have a bad back and, strain every time it gets up from a couch or its bed. So,
and well put.
Yeah. We all have our crosses to bear, I suppose. Right, so that was a very interesting visit to the east and back to the west, and probably back again and crisscrossing quite a bit with some of those names and groups of peoples. And I think that those stands in Central Asia and Eurasia sort of get skipped over in the history books, because it's almost like they were like the oceans, as opposed to, but as opposed to the oceans, cultures started there. They just found maybe easier places to live, closer to water or whatever, or drinkable water someplace else, and then took it with them. Though I guess Atlantis would be a myth of a culture on the water, but even then it was an island. Anyway, I don't want to get into Atlantis. Not Atlantis, no Atlantis. But yeah, that is really interesting. There's been a lot of books on it. I sometimes, there's these things that go around social media, and you can tell there's bots because like 20 million people are posting the same thing. But but one of the things that they're posting is like, what did your school teach you? There was absolutely a hero that turned out to be a villain or something like that. And I'm like, I don't even want to think that hard. But I do think about the things that like schools did not teach us about the steps in any sort of significant way. I mean, even the Mongol Empire got very little coverage. Also, my schools anyway, and I think I got a pretty good public school education compared to a lot of people that I've encountered, including modern day, but that's a different discussion too. But I really think the Constantinian, the Byzantine, the Eastern Roman Empire, or the Roman Empire, gets really short shrift on how important it was for 1,000 years after the fall of Rome. It's like it's forgotten, but it was like a pretty big deal.
Yeah, that was them, not us. It's how it's, and I think you're right about the stance. It is kind of like the ocean. At best, we trace the shipping routes through it, but it's what's on each side is what the focus has been, and yet they were seminal. I mean, if the Indo-Europeans came from Kazakhstan as a homeland, then it was quite central in its own significance.
And I guess it was whoever the first person was who figured out how to domesticate a horse. They might be the most important person in the world.
Even more than Zoro Astur.
Even more than Zoro Astur. I mean, there's a lot of but-for in there. I mean, and maybe somebody can... Well, there's an argument as to whether humans domesticated wolves or wolves domesticated humans, or it sort of happened. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to go try to figure that one out. But I think that the horse has been more important to the humans than the dog has. But... what do I know? In terms of how important wolves were in fending off like cave bears and saber-tooths and other wolves, evil wolves, dualistic wolves. So yeah, there's that. There's always stuff to meander about. So I thank you for this. I always thank you for your indulgence on sort of putting up with some of my zaniness and Kurgan versus Kyrgyzstan and trying to find cognates where there aren't cognates and stuff like that. But that's why you're the professor.
And Jeff, it's always fun having a conversation with you, and it's enjoyable.
Very good. Well, thank you for that. Hey, and if you know anybody that knows anything about Kush or Punt or Axum, I'd be love to, because that's my new thing. I always need to find new things to inspire myself to do this show. Otherwise, it's like, what's the point? There's only so many false UFO, false flags I can take. I mean, Atlas 3I has not announced themselves to the world, and though I did have a conversation with John Brandenburg, he's like, well, I don't think that Oumuamua, that was the one that passed about 6 or 7 years ago, was unfriendly. I'm like, well, how do you know? He's like, well, nothing happened. I'm like, how do you know nothing happened? Maybe it passed us and it went, out to the inner belt, and then it shot us a couple slugs of tungsten. And in 5 years, the kill shots were already shot. We just don't know it. He's like, well, you're pretty pessimistic. I'm like, yeah.
Well, it's easy to be pessimistic in the present situation, but...
That's true, but I mean, listen, I've said this a million times on the show, but even as a kid, I was this way. My mother used to call me Negative Norman. That was my first nickname, Negative Norman.
I identify as a militant optimist.
Oh. Well, very good.
We'll have to continue this.
Well, that's a dualism in and of itself too. Well, I see in the mirror there, obviously, whoever else is there is not a vampire, because I see their image in a vampire in a mirror.
Yeah, he's making dinner, but not right here. But
that's fantastic. All right, if you want people to find and follow you, I know you have a book, so we might as well promote that some.
All right. 2 books. Then my one on all of this, what we've been talking about, is called The Divine versus the Asurian, Asurian. I forget who publishes it, and I think it's Roman and Littlefield, but at this point, and then probably my whole philosophy is matter matters. And that I know you can get through Amazon, through Barnes and Noble, and so forth. Excellent.
My last doofy question: Asurian, is that related to the word Assyrian, or it's just one of those things that sounds the same?
No, it's from the Asuras, the demon, the Vedic demons.
Oh no, I remember that, and I know that Asur was a city. I'm just wondering if maybe they named the city after the demons, or somehow as it traveled west, it took on a name that you might name a city after it, but it could easily just be something that sounds the same and there's no relationship.
And I don't think there's a relationship, but
okay. Gotta ask my silly questions, or I would kick myself later and I'd be bothering you with it in the email while you're trying to fall asleep, because you're like 5 hours ahead of me. Is there a song that you associate with this conversation or this topic, or do you just want to be the outro?
A song. I would say not a song as such. I would say the second movement of Ravel's Piano Concerto.
Second? Is that like from Bolero?
Well, it's the same composer, but he did 2 piano concertos basically at the same time. One is the left-hand one, but this is the main in G major, I think it is.
Second movement of Ravel's Piano Concerto number 2. Is that right?
No, it's piano. It would be Concerto number 1, probably. And it was almost the last thing he wrote before he passes. He did 1 or 2 song cycles after that, and the whole concerto is wonderful, but that middle movement is, to me, it's serene, and it just takes you, I think, where we all want to go with our encounter with divinity, with nature, with life in the world.
Okay, is it about 9 minutes long?
Yeah.
Okay. Concerto number 1, second one was 1 that's 8 minutes and 48 minutes. So we're going to go with the shorter one, but it looks like it's the right one. All right, everyone. You're going to hear some Ravel. You're going to be put at peace and at ease. And if you're here because you're following Professor York, welcome. This is Garden of Thought. If you just hit subscribe, you'll get 2 to 3 shows a week. Some will be like this. Some of them will be, all over. Yeah, much different. Much different. And I do have a show where my co-host is a professional wrestler, and we talk to people in wrestling. But we try not to talk too much about wrestling, but we always talk a little bit about wrestling, but also about real world stuff. And if I can, I get them to talk about stuff like this for the ones who know this kind of stuff or are into it. So anyway, it's all fun. And if you don't like it, just hit Mark as Played. You can do that on Apple. Just hit Mark as Played. It's still download. It still counts for me. So, thanks. Anyway, Professor, until I find something else to bug you about that you feel confident to speak on, I thank you. And as always, you're appreciated and your contributions are welcome. And talk to John White. I think you guys would have fun having academic, very British discussions.
All right, I'll look forward to that. And thank you, Jeff. It's been fun.
Excellent.